Hey, we're both in black.
Yeah, I'm a little cheaper. Well, no, actually, this would have cost
Yeah, that's
considerably
an expensive
more.
sweatshirt.
Yeah, this is very expensive.
Yeah.
$2 through Corbin University.
Shirt's free, kid.
Yeah, no, they still charge you for the shirts.
Well,
they don't give
yeah.
them away. Hey, hello, friends. Welcome,
Friends and family.
friends and family. Welcome to Church in the Hills podcast called On This Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just talking about kids and school and expense and
Expenses
costs.
of life.
Yeah, all that stuff. That is why I'm wearing today this Corbin University sweatshirt, because I told my daughters, both of them are Corbin, well, not grads yet. Faith finished all of her
close.
credits. She'll graduate soon. Grace is in her last semester of finishing off just a few credits, and she'll graduate. But I told both of them, the only thing I want out of this is I want a sweatshirt. I want a university sweatshirt because your dad is a dummy. But I want people to think I went to Corbin University. So finally, just last week, Grace brought me home one and said, "Here you go, Dad."
Yeah.
Yeah. Your
Trying to
kids-
keep up with our kids.
No, fashion-wise, I'll never be able to.
Yeah.
They're just always, as it should be. They should be
Yeah,
cooler than
they
us.
should be
So.
one step ahead.
Paul, Timothy, we can segue into that.
Yeah.
Paul is the elder, Timothy is the younger. Still had some wisdom to pass on to his young, well, not his physical child, but his spiritual child.
Yeah.
That's what we've been doing on Sundays, is talking through First Timothy. We'll be into, this is the last Sunday, this was the last Sunday of First Timothy,
Yeah.
and we're going to go into Second Timothy right after that.
Amazing concept, right? Just the idea of passing on truth and wisdom to the next generation, which is what Paul was doing with Timothy, right? And what we hope we do with our kids,
Yeah.
or we wish someone might have done with us.
Yeah.
Every generation shouldn't have to learn the hard way. There should be a better way.
Yeah, and Paul was an educated man himself.
Yeah.
But he didn't just send Timothy off to college. He had some personal things he wanted to impart to him, some things that he didn't learn himself at the feet of Gamaliel. Was that the name of his teacher, if I remember right? Mm-hmm. But he wanted to impart some things to him from his spirit, really, from the soul.
Yeah.
Things that he'd learned on the road to salvation.
Yeah. It's crazy how for centuries and centuries in the history of man that truth and wisdom were passed on through family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you worked in a guild with your parents or your uncles or your grandfathers, or you worked on the farm, or maybe you studied, but you basically had this close connection with people who hopefully had a fair amount of life experience and wisdom, and they passed it on. They were deliberate about it.
Do I remember right? Wasn't there at least a short time where you worked at the same place as your dad?
Yeah, I did. I worked with my father for a year in a business. I was going to community college back in the suburb of Chicago, and so I needed just money, obviously extra money, and so I worked with him for a year, and it was fascinating.
But did he have a trade?
Yeah, he was kind of a welder fabricator, a millwright, I guess. Yeah. He kept a factory, a good sized factory in Chicago operating.
So did you come in at the bottom end of that?
Oh,
or
yeah,
doing something else?
I came in as just kind of a do whatever was needed to be done. I learned to weld and learned to fabricate. They build huge refrigeration units, so it was like putting together giant like Tinker toys every day. Only you were welding them, and so I learned a lot. It was a lot of fun, and not something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. It convinced me to go back to school.
That's funny. My dad was the same way. He's like, "Don't follow my footsteps, son." I mean, he'd teach me things along the way, but he kind of wanted me to do something else. Yeah. Really, he didn't want me to pick up the family business, because he was actually, we had a family business, but he didn't really want me to do it. He sold the business and moved on. But the spiritual, how do we get that from someone else? And here this Sunday we were talking about Paul's given a warning to Timothy and saying, "Hey, I want you to hold on to this that I've given you until the coming of Jesus." He mentions the second coming. Mm-hmm. There's a finish line out ahead of you. But I want you to know before that finish line, there are some traps along the way. There's some stumbling blocks or some things that can stop you from finishing this well, that I've watched other people stumble over these same things, is what he's saying. And I want you to be careful of these. Yeah.
I can't help but think about that idea of, a mentor someone has described as a among other things, as a wise guide. Mm-hmm. If I'm having to journey through deep woods or over rugged mountain terrain. It would be great
Right.
to not just stumble around and die in the wilderness. It'd be great to have a guide who, this is the way, avoid this. This route looks easy, but it's actually not, those kinds of see around the corner type people.
Yeah, and thinking about that illustration this week, I kind of went down a rabbit hole of, I like rally races. I just think they're really fun to watch. NASCAR to me, it's fine, but watching them drive in a circle, if you like NASCAR, I'm sorry, it's just not my thing. But rally races are so exciting because it's not a route. I mean, it's not like a track.
Right.
They're on roads.
Yeah.
There's a turn coming up. These roads were not
quite as predictable.
Yeah, they weren't made to drive 200 miles an hour on.
Right.
They were made to just drive on.
Yeah.
But these guys are doing it at 200 miles an hour. And so to survive that, they can't do it alone.
Right.
And a NASCAR guy, there's a guy
you're
in
in
your
the car
ear,
and
but
you're competing
where
with
the next turn is. No one has to go, hey, there's a left-hand turn coming up. There's a left-hand turn coming up. It's the only thing you're going to do is turn left. Again, sorry, NASCAR fans.
I can't believe how you take such a complex idea like NASCAR and simplify it to something, dumb it down like that. Just turn left, do it again, do it again, do it again. Now do it 200 times.
You took a right.
You won.
So
now we've really offended half the United States population.
Yeah. Oh,
my
man.
sister's listening to this.
I hope
dying
Bob,
right
I hope
now.
Bob doesn't listen.
Bob's
to this.
not listening. So
yeah, but in rally, there's a guy beside you who is telling you, and I don't even understand the code. I've listened to them, because they'll do in-car cameras,
right?
And there's this guy going, and he's almost speaking code.
Yeah,
but he'll say a word every once in a while they don't understand, like dip. Like, oh, there's a dip in the road. But then he's talking about left-hand turns and how many degrees they are and the incline and exactly what that looks like.
Kind of the co-pilot, truly like a navigator co-pilot.
And if you're not listening to them, you're going to die because you're going 200 miles an hour. There is not enough reaction time. No matter what good of an athlete you are, how good of an athlete you are, there's not enough reaction time. So you've got to be listening to him. So I kept thinking about that's Paul. Like Paul's the guy in the chair saying, okay, I know what's around this corner. Listen to me or you're going to go off into the ditch.
Isn't it crazy how, if you think about it, how critical the relationship had to have been between Paul and Timothy, or the driver and the navigator in this particular case of the rally racing, or anything that involves mentoring, right?
Yeah.
Because it's an arrangement. It's this agreement between two people. I have something to offer because I've been there. I have wisdom or experience. And the other person says, I'm willing to pay a price to get whatever, to transfer that. So it's such a powerful concept.
Yeah.
But if you're not in agreement about who's who, who's the mentor and who's the mentee, and are you going to truly listen, then it doesn't matter who you have.
I don't usually recommend rabbit holes to go down, but if you want to ever go down that rabbit hole of watching rally racers fight one another, the navigator and the driver will get in like arguments and start punching each other in the helmet because you didn't tell me this, or you're not listening to me, and they're literally punching each other in the face while they drive 200 miles an hour. It's pretty entertaining, but they're not winning.
Right.
I mean, they're losing, and they're having the fight in the ditch, because they've gone off.
They goofed up.
But Paul and Timothy had a very, very successful relationship. I mean, the church at Ephesus was
and they weren't running a rally race, but they were running a different kind of race, weren't they? They were trying to navigate a brand new growing church, exploding church in crazy times, surrounded by crazy politics and all kinds of conflicts, and both within and from without, right?
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of one of the things we mentioned in Timothy is it's full of imperatives. It's full of these commands from the wiser man to his son, so to speak. Look out, watch out, pay attention, be careful, stay the course, those kinds of things, which again, it kind of reminds me of my father, right? My father was a man of few words, but he was a man of conviction too. Like, I think you better look out for that. I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And sometimes I was willing to listen, and other times
that makes a good
wasn't.
father.
Yeah. And he spoke from a wealth of experience in his life experience.
So the trap that he's warning Timothy of this time is riches, or the love of money. Specifically, it says, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. Earlier, he calls it a trap. It is a trap. And he says the antidote is, but godliness, but contentment is great gain. Yeah.
Isn't it crazy, though, that he said, he uses the love of money term, but I don't know if people actually... I don't know. It's a thought still in process, but money is one thing. But I don't think people just live for the day when they can look at a pile of cash.
Right.
So they're not exactly in love with the cash or the gold. They're in love with what it represents, which might be freedom or excess or comfort or luxury or whatever. Right? Is what and it's kind of tied to our social structures, isn't it? We that's why the rich and famous are the reality TV shows are focused on. Everybody wants a peek into the life of the rich and famous.
They almost go hand in hand, right? It's rare that you hear of someone who is rich and not famous because it buys a certain notoriety.
Yeah.
And arguably right now, I don't know if there's ever been a time when we've been more enamored with wealth or billionaires
and fame
because of it's always been impressive what money could do.
I
mean, you look at the 7 wonders of the world, that's money. Someone with money and power said, I'm going to build a pyramid, I'm going to build a tower, I'm going to make an edifice that recognizes myself, right? But now we've got billionaires literally shooting themselves into space.
Or building yachts. My yacht tops your yacht. Extravagant, ostentatious wealth, right? Jesus said something really interesting. He said in one of the Gospels, he said, listen, he warned about wealth, and he said, you can't serve God and mammon. So he actually kind of personified money, right? He gave it a personality that it's not just bills or coins or stock. It's actually almost like a deity, right? And so he said, listen, you got to be careful because you can't worship. So we think of worship as, I'll never bow down before that. But it's actually heart's affections, right? Be careful. Something does, because worship is basically our affections, our devotions expressed in living or song or choices or something like that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it's really easy to put this off on somebody else as someone else's problem because I don't have enough money. I never feel like I have enough money. I never feel rich. I mean, you talked about that on Sunday. That feeling is the trap. You never actually feel rich. You never actually feel like you have enough. So you may think, but if I had what he had, that crazy millionaire, that crazy billionaire, then I would feel that
satisfied.
Way. But they don't. They don't feel satisfied. They don't feel like they have enough. That's the trap of wealth. And you always think about the thing it can give you. It's just a wild thing to think, and that's why we say that one of the side benefits of a mission trip. It's not the main benefit. The main benefit is the gospel is shared and proclaimed.
Right.
But one of the side benefits, if you are coming from a first world country, no matter how low you might feel your status is in that country, and if you're in a first world country, you often just feel like your status is low. We talk about whatever you feel about the one percenters. The reality is there is a lot more money at the top than at the bottom.
Absolutely.
And there's a smaller amount of people that have more than a lot of people that have less. So you always feel like, I don't really have that much. But when you travel to another place that genuinely has less, you come away feeling like, oh, wow, I'm really blind to how well off I have it.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
I think the power of comparison is really critical, right? Because it says in Proverbs, there's 2 Proverbs that come to my mind. One is a fool's eyes wander to the ends of the earth, and the eyes of a man. The other proverb is the eyes of a man are never satisfied. The eyes of a man are never satisfied. I mean, the Rolling Stones sang back in the 60s, right? I can't get no satisfaction. And certainly they had a large measure of success in that particular arena, right? But that idea that something in us yearns for more. Someone once asked Andrew Carnegie, who was a steel magnate, a baron of steel baron of the century before, and they said, "How much is enough?" He said, "Just a little bit more." So you can have a lot or a little, but still be consumed with this dissatisfaction of I don't have enough, right?
To modernize that. And you say Carnegie? Is that
Andrew Carnegie, yeah.
Will Arnett's an actor that's still relatively famous, and I was listening to a podcast where he's being interviewed, and someone just as a fun, like, hey, let's get this conversation going, this will be fun. They threw out a question like, if you had $1 billion and you just wanted to, blow $1 billion, well, like, how would you spend $1 billion? And he goes, okay, all right, but even to play this game, I'm going to need $2 billion. He says, if I'm going to blow $1 billion, I need to know there's $1 billion behind it.
Right,
All right, or else I can't play the game.
Can't play the game.
Yeah, and I just thought, isn't that wild? Like we can't even imagine that $1 billion is like to do this. I'm going to need like $1 billion's not enough. I need $2 billion. I'm like, okay, already you're showing our humanity.
Yeah.
You know, that there's something about the human heart. I would say its sinfulness that is hungry for something that simply cannot be fed financially.
Yeah.
But the trick is we think it can. I think this will do it. I really think this will do it. So we keep going back to that well, but my brokenness is not a financial problem. My feeling of not enough isn't a financial problem, and it's not like finances can't fix the problem. They can't buy the problem away. I am separated from God, and there's no $1 billion that'll buy that back. I need.
Isn't it interesting? You think about what's in between that. What you're describing there of, okay, I'm created by God for God, and God is enough. But somewhere in the middle is the psychology, I guess, of man. Like, if you look at our history back in the 1940s and 50s with the advent of radio and television and more modern forms of communication, advertising was it was around, but not anywhere near to the degree that it is today. But advertising was a lot of selling people what they needed, farm equipment, a car, whatever that was. But advertising today, I don't think is. I think some really smart people back in university in the 1970s and 80s, 60s, 70s, and 80s saw this incredible pioneer, this wide open field of consumerism, right? And so somehow they latched onto this idea of the materialistic heart, combined with the psychology of telling people that you're not enough, or it's not enough, or the latest gadget is the best option. Your old gadget won't work. And I just think, and
the psychological trick works every time.
Yeah,
because we still have this. I mean, unless you can find, and I mean, honestly, the kingdom Christ offers a contentment, but it doesn't come easy. Right. Like just because you're saved doesn't mean now I no longer materialistic. I don't have these wants and desires anymore. They're still there. It is a discipleship and a sanctification process that we go through. And I would argue that probably I'm afraid our culture is peak in just ignoring that part of Christianity. Yeah. But we just decided, well, that's not. I mean,
it's the permissible.
Yeah, like sin, that. So we don't need to. Yeah, exactly. It's the permissible sin. Yeah. Like, why would I? I don't think Christ even wants that. I mean, he told the rich young ruler that thing about, but that was something ancient. I know these people that lived a life of poverty, but what is that even about? What does simplicity, mean? I feel like everyone feels like they have the simplest life they could possibly have, but I would argue we don't.
Yeah,
we don't have a simple life. We've actually overcomplicated it and overattached things to it. And,
not to pick on this and beat it up, but I think it is worth recognizing that, like everything else, there are certain things. Paul said, it was Peter, he said to the church, abstain from fleshly lusts that war against your soul. Now, he might have been talking about some other kind of lust, but the fact is that something is warring against my soul. And contentment I think it's in Timothy, right, where Paul says to Timothy, listen, godliness with contentment is great gain. Yeah. It's a win. Godliness with contentment is a win.
That is Timothy. The wealth. The gain means wealth. He's saying if you want wealth, find contentment.
Yeah.
Because no amount of money will give you contentment.
Yeah.
But if it's
detached from, it can't be attached to resources.
But if you find contentment, any amount of money will be enough.
Exactly, yeah.
Any amount of money. And Paul isn't saying this like frivolously, like as a theory. He has lived with very, very little to nothing, and he has lived with much position and status. He knew what fame looked like. I mean,
a Hebrew, the Pharisees, Philippians.
Absolutely,
he talks about it.
He was up and coming, and that I think that fame piece is worth talking about as well, because we're in an age where Andy Warhol said in the future everyone will have 15 minutes of fame.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, in the future, everyone will be famous for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And he was like, Andy Warhol says crazy things, and he said that. But now there is this reality, like everyone's like, wow, I really can be.
Yeah.
Like, this podcast could blow
go
up.
viral.
And make like famous. And wouldn't that feel good
Yeah.
to have millions of people liking you?
What would that do for my identity?
Yeah. I read this article recently thinking about this. Ethan Hawke, do you know who that is? He's an actor as well. I think a really talented guy. At the first time I ever remember seeing him, I think he was 18 years old, and he was in Dead Poets Society. You know, an amazing movie, really, great movie.
90s movie, or Robin Williams? Yeah.
Robin Williams. Robin Williams, So, and he talks about, kind of getting mentored by Robin Williams and about fame and what that looks like. And growing up in that spotlight from 18 until I think he's 52 right now. I think it was Rolling Stone article. And he was talking about fame and how he said the reason why fame makes people crazy, and because we love to hear like the crazy thing this famous person does. He says, because it's isolating. It doesn't seem like it's isolating, but it's isolating. It puts you behind glass, makes everyone treat you a little bit differently, a little bit better. Like you get exempt from some of the social norms. You don't have to act normal because you're famous.
Yeah.
And he had this amazing thing I want to read that he said. He said, in that isolation, he said, a snake of madness and megalomania creeps into even the most stable mind. The more fame, the more poison you swallow.
Yeah.
That is so, like, the snake of madness and megalomania creeps into even the most stable mind. Or the more fame, the more poison you swallow. And he goes on to say that, he says, the only cure, the only healing elixir that he knows is friendship. He's saying community. Like, real friendship can keep you from falling for yourself, in a way.
Genuine, authentic relationships.
And, I mean, I'm sure he's been paid incredibly well over time. That wealth produces fame, that fame produces wealth. It is this cycle. But he knows. He said, I've tasted the poison, and I'm telling you, it'll kill you. You're gonna have to have friends around, community around you. I just thought that was interesting. He's not a Christian, as far as I know, and this isn't necessarily Christian advice, but there's some real truth in there.
It's crazy to me to look back into the Old Testament and see like the correlation between idolatry and destruction. Because in the Old Testament, the idols of the lands or the peoples or whatever, they were never satisfied. They were constantly asking for more. And so, in fact, God chided the Israelites. He said, those who make them will be like them.
Yeah.
So these things we look to give us identity, to give us value, to give us something, whatever we're hungry for, the soul hunger, they by their very nature, they can't satisfy. But yet, it's like salt water. It's just, they just make you hungrier and thirsty. I was just reading this morning in John 6 where Jesus said, listen, he said, the flesh counts for nothing, but I'm the bread of life. My body and my blood, he said, are the bread and life and the bread and drink of the world. And again, that scripture has been taken out of context for a lot of bad things. But the idea that feeding on the God who created me, that relationship with the God who created me, who gives me identity, who assures me that my needs will be taken care of, who gives me a sense of value. If I've lost that, I don't know what's left except to look for it, in the world. How many stories have we heard in the last 30 or 40 years? A classic one is all the way back to Marilyn Monroe, the innocent blonde who showed up and just wanted to be an actress. And we exalt these guys, we exalt these people, put them on pedestals, make them mini gods, and then they self-destruct when they get up there. A recent one, if you're listening today, is Matthew Perry, right? In the last years of his life, he was making $1 million an episode, and he was a spokesperson, so to speak, for that particular generation, and yet. On the inside, an addiction was eating him alive, and we can. It's a disease, no question, but it's also a deep emptiness.
We're all. I mean, maybe some of us are more prone to addictions than others. But we're all. We're all in that same boat of we're very susceptible to that, and I was also reading about him, and he said in his. I haven't read his book. I was reading excerpts of his book, and he said that. Before he went to that Friends audition, before he blew up, he actually prayed to God, please make me famous. Yeah. Please, God, I just want to be famous. Make me famous. And God answers, God answers prayer. It just happened. Whatever. He became famous. And then he said in his lowest point, when he had realized he's at rock bottom, that he was an addict, he was hurting himself, he's hurting the people around him, He said, I got on my knees and I just said, help. I just asked God for help. And man, it's worth reading that excerpt, how he describes that there was suddenly a presence in the room, that I had asked for God to come into my life, and it wasn't just a psychological, like, there was a new presence in the room that wasn't there before.
Wow.
There was a release he'd never felt before. There was a connection to God he'd never felt before.
Yeah.
I don't know in the details. I pray, I hope, man, wouldn't it be great if he had really found God? But I believe God answered like he does. God is so humble to answer our prayers when we ask for help.
And hasn't that story of falling on my knees in my brokenness at the rock bottom place in my life, whether you find that in a hotel room or at home in your office or in a recovery group or jail or wherever, God answers that prayer, right?
Yeah.
But the key thing is the key point there is we've come to the end of ourselves. You know, Jesus said in the Gospels, he said, a man's life, in that same passage about mammon, he said, a man's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. You meditate on that passage. So what is my life? Isn't that like the 5,000-year-old question? What is my life? And apart from God, there's a whole bunch of people that want to take advantage of that question and sell me something.
Yeah, I'll tell you what you are.
Yeah, I'll define you. I'll define you, and that's to me that's the beauty of the gospel, and both the beauty and the challenge. Because to believe that God could define me, it predicates that I have to believe that God's the origin of my life. He's the origin of joy. He's the origin of sustenance or whatever, right? Yeah. And so it really is a faith issue at its core. It's a faith issue.
Yeah, it's amazing just talking about how we look sometimes to riches, to money to answer that question. Isn't it? I would say the other thing I think I've seen people turn to the most for that is just some companionship.
Yeah.
Will you define me? Like, will you be, like, they're looking for that love, that
I call it a soul hunger.
Yeah.
There's this deep hunger in my soul.
Right. Yeah, we think of lust as just a sexual, but I think there is a lust for, I need you to give me something.
Yeah.
I can't be complete without something from you. And certainly there's a physical aspect to it, but I think there's a define me aspect to it as well. What did Tom Cruise say? You complete me.
Yeah.
But that always puts a burden on another person that they are unable to carry.
Yeah.
Because another human cannot. I mean, they're feeling the same thing you're feeling. So two broken people just end up coming together. Without the God who makes us whole, who saves us, then it's just two broken people coming together, trying their best to get something out of the other person that will care for them, that will meet their needs, that will, and it can be painful.
Yeah. I over the years, in ministry, we run into what we're describing here all the time. I think, and we're all in the same boat in the sense of we're created. Tozer says, if we're the handiwork of God, if we are the handiwork of God, then all of our problems and their solutions are theological.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So what he's saying there, I think, among other things, might be, man, if I'm made by God, my identity has to be found in God. My security has to be found in God. My plans have to be found in God. My self-talk, and I know from my own life, growing up with all the insecurities of life and who I was and trying to figure that out. It wasn't until I began to really understand God and who He was and what salvation meant, what the cross meant, what God becoming flesh and dwelling among us. I mean, think about what a jump that was, and how the gospel affirms our true condition. We're broken, but we can be redeemed. And a friend of mine years ago, a good friend of mine, he told me a story about himself, about his family. He said when he was younger, his father was pretty successful. And he wanted to be like his father, but he didn't get much from his father in the way of affirmation. And so he set out to be a millionaire. He said, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30 years old. And so he went to work, hard work, just like his father. And in fact, he reached that goal long before 30. And then by the time I met him, he'd doubled or tripled, probably significantly more than $1 million. And he said to me once, he said, and you know what? He said, I would trade it all just to hear my father say, I love you and I'm proud of you. I thought, wow, what a telling kind of a understanding, to have that. I'm good at this. I'm making more money than I could spend, and yet I would trade it all just to hear those words. And so we can hear those words without going down that road.
Yeah. That's amazing. I just sitting here thinking, we have this discussion. It's not that we don't have financial problems. We don't have relationship problems.
Sure.
Like, you can have a financial problem. You have a relationship problem, but it's not your biggest problem.
At the core, it's not.
Yeah. And I know in missions, being missionaries, sometimes you have to meet someone's felt need before they even have the ability to
Someone's
hear the
starving
gospel. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if all you've done is meet that felt need, or even left them with $1 million, you've not
just a Band-Aid.
solved their
Just
problem.
a Band-Aid,
Yeah, that we have a sin problem.
Yeah.
I may be single and feel like I have a singleness problem. I need a relationship. Or I may be in a relationship and think I have a relationship problem. I'd like to be single. Or I might have might not have any money and feel like I've got a financial problem. But ultimately, our deepest needs are not temporal.
Yeah. Jesus said again, I am the bread of life. He that comes to me will never go hungry. And I believe the gospel speaks to the hunger that's deep in our souls. The hunger to be loved. And those hungers are something we all share, right?
Yeah.
The hunger to be loved, the hunger to be significant. That's not a bad thing. The hunger to be taken care of, to be protected, and to be known. All those things are stamped on us by the image of our Creator. So,
I think we probably need to close, but I keep thinking of this one verse in James 5 that relates to this Sunday, but we didn't share it. It's James 5 verse 3, I think. I don't have my glasses on. Those small numbers are hard to see. It says, it is in the last days that you've stored up your treasure. And it's in a rebuke to rich people who have not been generous.
Yep.
And he's telling them, like, look, these things are all going to rust.
Chase the wrong success.
It's all going to burn.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, you stored up treasures in the last day. And I thought, man, if James could say that, and it be absolutely true 2,000 years ago nearly, how much more true is it in my lifetime, and how am I treating what God has given me? Am I being generous with what he's given me? Or am I feeling like there's never enough, I don't have enough to share?
How many times have you and I, as pastors, been in a hospital room or in a hospice situation where someone is facing the last few hours, days of their life? And I've never, in 3.5 decades of ministry, had anybody wish they had spent more time in the office, wish they'd made more money, wish they'd acquired more properties. Again, none of those things are necessarily wrong. But the point is that the end of our life brings everything into crystal clear focus of what is valuable. What I have seen over and over is a longing for family, for a relationship to be mended, to be restored, an opportunity to ask forgiveness, an opportunity one more time to be with your loved ones. And what does that do? It just reveals what we were made for, what's really important.
Well, folks, I hope you are following along with us in Timothy and not just listening to us, but also digging into the Word yourself.
Yeah, come join us.
Yeah, please come on a Sunday. Come be a part of Church on the Hill. Come and serve. I'll unashamedly ask you to come and serve. Laying down your life is that. If you're wondering, like, how do I find this contentment? What does that look like? Start there. Start by serving, giving not just of your finances, giving your life. Serve with us at Church on the Hill, and I think you will find eternal life and transformation. Yeah.
We're a multi-site campus. We have a campus in Kaiser, a campus in South Salem, multiple services. You can find it all on our website, cothcommunity.com. So if you have any questions or comments, get a hold of us. It'd be great. And if this was helpful, share it with somebody else.
Yep. Bless y'all.
Yeah.
See you.
Take
Bye.
care.